I was thinking about this concept the other day where life is like a LARP, and LARP is live action role play. For people that are unfamiliar with the term LARP, it's when people hold an event and set up a live action role play scene. So someone will create a plot, and then people will dress up as certain characters, and then they'll have certain stat points. They can incorporate a money aspect into the game, some sort of fighting aspect with swords or medieval weapons, and basically a LARP is just a live action role play of any scenario that they could come up with a certain plot or scenarios, ranking up as a character, keeping track of hit points, skill points, life, and money, and all of those kind of aspects. So I was thinking of it because we do a lot of things in terms of watching movies, playing video games, and then LARPing being one of them, one of those activities that people take place where it's all setting up a scenario, and we kind of use it for entertainment or referencing historical purposes. So like when people do historical references and reenactments of certain events, we have this tendency to say, oh, well, that was in the past, or that's just a movie, or that would never happen, that's fiction, that's just in the movies. But the thing with LARPing, that I was thinking about this concept the other day, where someone could create a LARP event where hundreds of people show up and camp out and have tents, and they each choose a character and dress up, and they go into character during the actual LARP. And whether they acquire money or whatever the objective is of that LARP, or the rules or the guidelines, their character can level up in the game, whereas they're acquiring more money, or they kill a certain enemy or take over a certain territory. Same thing like a video game too, where you level up certain attributes of that character. But real life is like that, in a sense where you're a character in the game and people assign roles to you, and their role assigned to you is not necessarily another person's role assigned to you. And so you're constantly playing a game, even if you think that it's separate. Like even if you're the person that says, oh, well, that's just in the movies, or that was in the past, or that's fiction, this is real life, and you're trying to make that distinction. Real life and those things have a very fine line, because it's still kind of the same thing. You dress up a certain way that you normally wouldn't for a job interview, because you're in a sense playing a role. Because the other people that are going to go to that job interview, you're gonna try to stand out however you can, whether that's dressing nicer, whether you embellish your resume. You're playing a role constantly. So you're playing the role that you play at work. You go home and you play the role to the parents or the spouse or the kids, and then you go with your friends and you're playing a role. You go on the street and you're playing a role. You're constantly playing these roles, and you're leveling up and leveling down based on someone else's perspective on the objective or the money you have or how you're affecting other people. So I just thought it was really funny thinking about this the other day, because when you do see those LARPs, I've never done a LARP myself. I know a couple people that have been to LARPing events, but when you see events like that, when people do these big LARPs that can last several days and they camp out and dress up as characters, in a sense they could have this medieval kind of plot where there's a certain kingdom that they're trying to take over. So one person is a character in the LARP as the ruler of that kingdom, and then everybody else assumes a different character for the plot, and then you can go to different checkpoints or places within that LARPing event to buy materials or level up certain attributes of your character. And each LARP is different because they assign different rules, but as you're doing that in the game and then the LARP is over, the LARPing event, and you go back to what you think is real life, it's still just kind of the same way. You're still just this character that has to assess what it is your character can do. The only difference is when you're watching that movie or you're playing that video game or going to that LARP, you can create that fictional character in however you want based on the plot of whatever's going on. But in your real life, you're assigned a certain character in a lot of ways that you didn't even choose. So your height, your race, the parents you were born to, socioeconomic status that you started in, the way you're perceived by other people, whether you're a man or a woman. There's a lot of things about your birth circumstance that you didn't even choose. And so a lot of people that get really messed up in life, it's because they don't take an introspective look at what their own character actually is. It's like playing that LARP or playing that video game, watching that movie. If you don't know your own character, if you're playing a chess game, if you don't know your own piece on the board, if you think you're a king or you think you're a queen, but you're actually a pawn, then you're not going to make correct moves. And so a lot of people find it hard to look at it that way, because then they don't want to have to assess the world as an unfair place. So they tend to believe things that are more feel-good, where like, oh, there's no difference between being a 6'5" guy and a 5'5" guy. And so they want to dismiss those aspects of the world, and then they constantly get screwed over and they make mistakes and they don't understand why life is so hard. It's because a lot of it comes back to a lack of introspection on their basic character. It all starts on knowing your character. If you know your character, if you know how you're perceived, if you know how you impact people, that's a big one. You have to know how you impact people, both positively and negatively. But that's subjective too, because someone's positive impact perceived about you could be another person's negative, and so on. But just having the whole, I guess, overall sense of that to what every other character possibly could perceive you as, so that you can have a better sense of your own character in order to win that game. So it's a lifelong process in terms of learning that, learning yourself, learning the other characters on the board, learning the overall game, learning what the objective even is. But when you really look at it, life is exactly like a LARP. It's like a movie. It's like a video game. The line is very blurred between the two. So understand your character, understand how you're perceived, understand how you impact people, so that you know what piece on the chessboard you actually are, so that you can actually make the correct move and not get taken out of the game.